It's your Tuesday daily delivery. I am Michael Rand, happy to be back for another day. Hope everyone's having a great day out there today. Tremendous show coming up today. You might have listened yesterday a couple of different times. Patrick Royce, of course, on the usual Monday morning show, but I had a feeling we might be doing a second one, and we were. Chip Scoggins hopped on with me once we received word that Niko Medved had been hired as the Gophers men's basketball coach. No surprise with the decision. Not much surprise with the timing after Colorado State lost in the NCAA tournament Sunday night. Heartbreaker to Maryland in the closing seconds of that game. He became available. Boom, boom, boom. It happens very fast. Announced yesterday, press conference today. So Chip and I talked about that on a special edition of Daily Delivery. Part 2 of that conversation between Chip and I, which we'll get into a little bit more of kind of where do they go from here? What does Niko Medved need to do now that he's been hired? What does the money look like? Where are they going to get the money to pay for the buyout, the salary, the buyout again? 2 buyouts, one on each end, buying out Ben Johnson, buying out Niko Medved at Colorado State, paying presumably a higher salary, and then, of course, all of the revenue sharing, $20+ million coming into big-time college sports starting next year. So Chip and I will get into a little bit more of the reaction to Niko Medved's hire, but also kind of the challenges, the opportunities, and the money. How is the math going to work out? So listen for that a little bit later in the show. Twins, more or less, have finalized their opening day roster. We'll have more to say about that on Wednesday's show. Bobby Nightingale Jr. from the Star Tribune expected to join me to kind of do more or less a season preview. The season starts in 2 days, you guys. And, roster pretty much set. Strengths, weaknesses, pluses, minuses of this team. Maybe an update on the sale of the team as well with Bobby. Some interesting stuff in a, combined local and national report from The Athletic. I want to ask Bobby about that before I get too much into it, but expect stuff about the sale of the Twins on Wednesday's show as well with Bobby Nightingale Jr. as we get ready for the start of the season. Wild game to discuss here in a minute. They lost yesterday. First, though, what I miss. Going to start Wolves, 3 losses in their last 4 games. A skid that started where it continued on Monday night. Now, 2 very different games against Indiana. The one a week ago that the Wolves lost when Obi Toppin hit a couple of seemingly impossible shots, including a well-contested corner 3 in the closing seconds that provided the final margin. That was much different than it was last night. In that game, the Pacers were missing 4 of their 5 starters. That game was at Target Center. The Wolves were on an 8-game winning streak. Everything was going well. They have not seemed like the same team since then. They dropped that next game inexplicably against New Orleans right after that. Then they beat New Orleans. They routed them. But now, again, losing to the Pacers in Indiana. This one, more forgivable in outcome, at least. Indiana, a lot of those players that missed that previous game in Minnesota were playing here, including, Pascal Siakam. Obi Toppin played both games. He made a bunch of threes. But also Tyrese Halliburton played. He's terrific. He had like 24 points, 11 assists last night. Indiana beats the Wolves 119-103, a game that wasn't really close most of the way. The scoreboard said it was close for a while in the first half, but even play style, how things were going, dictated that it was not the Wolves' night. They just seemed grouchy. They seemed grouchy on the court. They were arguing everything. They were complaining about everything. They were not really getting into any kind of flow. I watched most of the second quarter, third quarter of that game. It had no flow. It was like a muddy game. It was just not a fun game to watch, especially for the Wolves, because they were not playing well. They were not getting the outcome they wanted. They end up losing by 16. Time of year where you can't afford any loss. Again, this one more forgivable. Indiana's a good team. Indiana has a better record than the Wolves. Like, they're a good team. So losing to Indiana at Indiana while Indiana is full strength, there is no shame in that. What is problematic is the 2 losses to Indiana and New Orleans before that put the Wolves in this precarious position where everything matters this time of year. Everything is magnified. They're trying to stay out of the play-in. And now they've fallen far enough that they've brought the Clippers back into this too. The top 8 in the NBA West is pretty well solidified. You can tell who's going to be in the top 8 almost certainly. But remember, the format is the top 6 get in automatically. 7, 8, 9, and 10 go to the play-in round. 7 plays 8 on the 7's home court. Winner of that game automatically in. Loser of that game plays the winner of the 9-10 game to get the 8 seed. So there you go. Wolves will still probably have a couple chances to get into the playoffs, even if they're in the play-in. But for a while, it was like, hey, they're on a roll. They won 8 in a row. Can they catch up to Golden State? Can they catch up to the Lakers, who have a tough schedule? LeBron was out for a while. Can they catch one of these other teams? If they catch fire, if they take advantage of this schedule, can they catch one of these other teams? Now it's like, can they hold on at least to the 7? So they have the home game for that first play-in game to get the 7 seed. Otherwise, they're looking at a road game to try to get the 7 seed, or losing that game, a do-or-die game where they might not even make the playoffs. So it's all precarious right now, which makes it even more frustrating how they are playing right now. Immature shot selection, immature approach during the game, and I think that's what bothered head coach Chris Finch the most on Monday. Here he was post-game talking about the effort and the focus.
Start of the first and start of the third, our attention to detail was really poor, and all just careless with the ball as well. So on top of that, and shot selection, so it was kind of a funky off performance all the way around. We could have gone to the hoop a lot more than we did. They were pretty physical on the ball, and we needed to play strong with the ball and at the point of attack offensively, and we were never able to do that. Yeah, I just think I've said it before. Just you're going to make mistakes. You're going to have nights where you don't play well. You're not going to you don't finish. You don't shoot well. Right now I think our offense is bothering our defense a little bit too much. That's something that's reared its head at times for us. But we gotta get back to guarding at a high level that we were doing.
Can't disagree. Based on what I saw, Anthony Edwards did not seem pleased. He left without talking to reporters. He was 1 for 11 from three-point range, wearing a wrap on his hand, a right thumb laceration. I'm sure that affected his shot. Maybe don't take 11 threes if your shot is not falling. His shot just did not look right at all on Monday. So, team that needs to desperately win every game can't come out with that kind of lack of focus, can't come out with that kind of lack of, ability in these games. You gotta be more focused. You gotta be better in these games. That's what's probably disappointing the most for everybody involved. Wild, meanwhile, lose 3-0 to Dallas. It was a kind of a low output game again into the late second period. Dallas puts 2 on them right there. They get an empty net goal late. Gustafson was good again. Jake Ottinger was excellent in goal for Dallas, as he seems to be every time he plays. The Wild, Ottinger, of course, local guy, great goalie in Lakeville, and he plays well against the Wild. I don't know if he's ever lost in regulation to the Wild. Minnesota's still in pretty good playoff shape, trying to get this one to the finish line. Again, I kind of feel like we talk about the same thing with the Wild down the stretch here. It's like, can they squeeze out enough points to make it to the postseason and hope that you get Kaprizov back, hope that you get Eriksson Ek back, hope that you get Brodin back to become a more complete team, a team that can win multiple ways instead of just trying to eke out these low output, low event kinds of games. It's not been great to watch lately. Let's be honest. The Wild were much more fun to watch earlier in this season when everybody's flying up and down the ice. That's just not the kind of team they are. They're missing so many key players. Can they hold on? That's not a fun storyline, right? Like, can you hold on? They banked enough points early in the season. Can they hold on? Can they hold off St. Louis? Can they hold off some of these other teams that are trying to not just get a better seed than them, but knock them out of the playoffs entirely? It's not going to take much, but they have a pretty challenging schedule coming up. Listen to this. tonight they have to play Vegas, Pacific Division leading Vegas. Potentially a playoff preview if the Wild wind up as the first wild card, ostensibly the 7 seed, if we're just looking at it objectively. Vegas in line to be the 2 seed. Winnipeg looks like they will be the 1. They'll be the best division winner. Not for sure that Vegas gets there. They're up by 5 though in their division, so that would be the Wild's playoff opponent if the season ended today. I do believe they would be the 7, Vegas would be the 2. So that's a preview of that. That's tonight. Next game after that, Washington. Most points right now in the entire NHL. Ovechkin pursuing history, things of that nature. So that's a tough team. After that, it doesn't get much easier. You've got a lot of other challenging games after that. New Jersey, that's a good team. That's a playoff team. You've got them twice in a row, home and away. Then you got the Rangers and Islanders, who are not great, but both are desperate right now, both kind of clinging to playoff hopes. Those will be desperate games, both of those road games. Not necessarily a bad thing for the Wild. They've been better on the road this year than at home, but both of those will be a challenge. And then the Stars again. So it's a lot of tough games coming up. Their next 7 or 8 games in a row here are going to be challenging. They're going to need to get points as best they can so they don't make this so narrow going down the stretch. So I think the Wild's problems are different than the Wolves' problems right now. The Wolves' problems are more self-inflicted matters of focus. They are more or less healthy, have their full complement of players. The Wild don't. Both teams, though, trying to land this plane, get into the playoffs any way they can, hope that they are the best versions of themselves come mid-April, because I don't think either one of them are right now in late March.
Open a smart checking account at Royal Credit Union to get no monthly fees, no minimum balance, and a $250 bonus. See details at rcu.org/checking bonus. No minimum balance required to obtain bonus. Offer ends 5/31/25. Insured by NCUA.
Like I said, we're going to bring back Chip Scoggins, Star Tribune columnist, right now to continue our discussion of Niko Medved and the Gophers men's basketball program. Chip Scoggins, what does Niko Medved need to do right away? I feel like the expectations have changed for college basketball. You might have hired someone before and you're coming off a losing season. You might say, okay, you get a little grace period, you get a little time to kind of build up to it. And yeah, I don't think there's pressure, go to the Final Four next year, but the way things move now, you can put together a good team right away if you do good things in the portal, if you recruit. It's not like you can't be successful right away anymore.
Yeah, can you bring some of those Colorado State players?
Those guys are pretty good.
Good.
I watched more Colorado State basketball in the last 4 days than I probably have in my whole life, and I like the way they played. They were a good team. I mean,
they have talent and they have a system.
Nick Clifford is a nice player. They had some things going.
Yeah. Well, obviously, you got to hit the portal hard. And that's the component with this is we need to hear from them what is that NIL money going to look like? Because I think in a power conference, particularly the SEC or Big Ten, at a very minimum going forward within this new revenue sharing world, and Coyle calls it the institutional NIL. Regular NILs, the outside the collective, Dinkytown
athletes. Yeah,
you'll hear it a lot from him. I think going forward, institutional NIL, that means the revenue sharing. I think between the two, the NIL and the revenue sharing, a minimum you have to be at $4 million for the roster, minimum.
Yeah.
We saw schools this year that are $7-8 million. I don't think they're going to get to that. I've been told by people I know that they want to be in that top third of the Big Ten. In rev share. So if you start doing the math, they need to be in that 5 million or more range. And so that has to be a big component of it. Now as he's starting to call these recruits and saying, hey, here's what I have to offer, you got to put together a competitive roster through NIL, because this is going to be an interesting year if we just look at this year. Because you have Isaac Osama and who's the other freshman, Grace, I can't remember his name, the kid that I think he redshirted this year.
Oh, yep.
Yeah, I think they only had two. Now they have some incoming kids. We'll see if they stick with their commitment. We'll see how that shakes out. But you're talking about a lot of transfers you have to come in, and so I think first and foremost is try to do the best you can with the revenue sharing to get a competitive roster in here, and then just establish an identity with this program to where it's not constant upheaval every year. And I've talked to people at the university a lot about revenue sharing and NIL, and they're of the belief, and I agree with them, that we focus so much on the portal and how much you can give there. The most important part of it is retention, being able to keep your players. And we've seen that on the football side with Darius Taylor, Coy Parrish. Last couple of years, they've kept their best players from transferring by and large. They need to be able to do that so you're not losing Elijah Hawkins. You're not losing Pharrell Payne that are going on playing well at other programs. You need to be able to keep the players you want and supplement through the portal. And so I think Niko will give them an opportunity to do that as he establishes his program, his system, and has the financial resources to keep the players that they want to keep.
Grayson Grove was the player we were searching for a minute ago. I knew he was from Alexandria. I couldn't put it all together.
I couldn't get his last name. Yeah, I knew Grayson.
Looked it up quick. It's an interesting time just in college sports in general. You look at the Sweet 16 this year. Royce and I talked about this on Monday. It's all major conference schools. It's like 7 SEC teams, Big 10, and Big 12 have four teams each. That's it. That's what it is. That's what it is. So that's the sphere they're competing in. I also probably wonder if, Niko Medved looks at it and says, man, like it's going to be hard to keep having success at Colorado State. Like getting to the second round, almost getting to the Sweet 16 at Colorado State right now is a very good season. It's only going to get harder when these major conference schools are playing in the $20.5 million revenue pool and everybody else is playing in the shorter pool. So it's probably a good time for him to go, which maybe explains even more of the timing of this, why it's time to move on from Ben Johnson and go this route. But it's only going to get more competitive and difficult in this sphere. And I think Mark Coyle, I think he wants to be in the deep end of the pool. I think, he wants to win at basketball. He came from basketball schools. I think it drives him crazy that they were that lousy at basketball. Without
a doubt. And I've talked to a number of people with the program. I did a column a couple weeks ago about I could feel that frustration from talking to people that Coyle worked at Kentucky. He was the AD at Syracuse. He's seen what a valuable basketball program is to an overall athletic department. In today's day and age with revenue sharing, you have to be able to squeeze as much money out of football and men's basketball as you can because they're the two primary revenue drivers. And when they're averaging 8,000 fans announced, not even in the building, announced last year, that's not anywhere near good enough. That's not going to work. You need to have more revenue flowing from that program, which means more success. And so Mark Coyle sits on the NCAA tournament selection committee. Do you think it didn't bug him to no end to have to sit there and put at-large teams into the tournament?
Yeah.
I've heard him say it before. There's 38 spots. Big 10 winner and 37 at-larges. He said he wants his program to be one of those 38 regularly. And so he wants basketball to be good. And the fact that I think we'll see what the final buyout numbers for Niko were, but I think it was around $3 million, maybe high teens.
Marcus was writing 1.8 recently. I don't know where that came from because I feel like that was fluctuating. So we'll see where that comes from. But they had to pay Ben's buyout. Like, go on with this for a minute.
So Ben's buyout. This buyout, you're going to give him a 6-year deal in the salary. Yeah. So again, you operate on the cheap. There's a great chance that 4 years from now, you're going to be right back in the same spot. So you have to spend money to get this kind of hired, to give yourself the best chance to succeed in basketball. And so I do believe, now actions are mean more than words, but I do believe Mark Coyle and the university is committed to giving the financial resources to make this program competitive with peers.
Where, though, Chip, is the money going to come from? Because you can only squeeze so much more revenue. Yeah, if they sell a few thousand more tickets per game next year, that'll help the bottom line. That is not $20 million. That is not, football has room for growth too, but that stadium is what it is. It's not huge. Yeah. It's 50,000 people. Like, there's only so much revenue growth potential. I don't know how much the media rights jump up next year. They're already at about 60 million per team right now, 66 with everything. I don't know if that's taking a big bump next year to help with this, but the math doesn't math in a lot of cases right now.
It is the $20.5 million question that I want to see answered, because you're right. They balance the budget. It's not like they put $15 million aside every year in savings. That's not how they spend basically what they get. Now, I do think that the media rights distribution is going to take a pretty significant jump this year. I think this is the first year of an extension, so I think it does go up considerably. I don't think it goes up $20.5 million. No. You hear all these things. Are they going to cut sports? You can't cut your way to $20.5 million. I just don't see that as an option. Mark Cole's on record multiple times saying that they are going to be a full funding of revenue share, so they've got to come up with it somehow. So I assume they have a plan.
They better.
It's not caught them off guard. I mean, clearly they have a plan. They've been talking about this, I know, daily behind the scenes, how they're going to do it. But I don't know. They've been hesitant to discuss it publicly until the judge approves it in April. And then some schools have come out and said kind of what percentages they're going to give. What I've seen in general is that football is going to get 70 to 75% of it, men's basketball 15 to 20%, and then the other sports after that. So, I mean, obviously the two
biggest revenue generating sports.
Forget the biggest share of the pie. But I have as many questions as you do about how they're going to make this work. But as Mark Cole said, if you're in those two biggest conferences, you almost have to. You got to be a full funder. So, but it's a question. It's for sure a question, and it's and the thing is like, this is not just a one-time thing. This is every single year. You've got to come up with that $20.5 million.
Puts a certain amount of pressure on them to win. Puts a certain number of pressure on ticket sales, donors. I mean, you've got some growth potential there. Like, if you have a good basketball team, you might get more donors. You're not just getting more ticket sales, things like that. It's just like, unless the media rights increased by a lot more than I realized they are, maybe it's going up $10 or $15 million, which would make a lot of the gap up. If that's the case, maybe it's easier to get to that number, but it's daunting. How much they have to pay is daunting, especially when they're operating on this kind of like right on the margin of red and black. Yeah,
well, I wish I had the exact number, and I'll look it up for next time around about what the bump is in the media rights distribution. But it goes back to the original point, is you absolutely have to be successful in football and men's basketball. I mean, it's just a must to help offset those costs. And, you can argue about Ben Johnson's tenure, but it wasn't the fan apathy had set in. And if that continued, it was going to be a real problem for the department. So I think they'll get a initial rush of enthusiasm and excitement because of this hire, and that's a big reason why you make the commitment financially to do the buyouts, to go get the number one guy on your list, because you need to give that program the best chance you can to succeed.
Yeah. Well, we'll see. News conference on Tuesday. We'll start to get even more answers, or at least kind of the bigger picture. We'll get to know Niko Medved a little bit better. Seems like a personal guy. Seems like a good guy. Seems like they made a good hire. Again, that guarantees nothing in terms of success, but it does seem like they have the execution of this was about as good as it could be, and now we just have to see if it works.
Yeah, as I said in my column, Mark Cole got it right. I absolutely think he got it right with this, getting the guy he had number one on his list for many different reasons. And so, it'll take some time, but I do think he absolutely got this hire right.
Chip, appreciate it. Take care.
Thanks, brother.
Great stuff from Chip. Always appreciate his perspectives. The money is interesting. The money is so interesting to me. Can't get like a great, clear answer on where the money's going to come from, how much more money they're going to take in media rights as this goes forward. But a lot of this is tied to revenue. This is revenue sharing. So you have to imagine this is going to come in a few different ways, how they're going to make up this $20.5 million in the first year. And by the way, if it's revenue sharing, if it's percentage of revenue, that number is going to keep creeping up, you would imagine, as years go on. It's not going to be a flat $20.5 million every year. So keep that in mind as well. As money goes up, money going out also goes up. Looks like a good percentage of this will be offset by more media rights money, like maybe half. I'm just kind of ballparking it, looking at different sites, looking at what's been reported. Obviously, they've gained money over the years in that, live sports, live TV, the contracts keep going up. Then you added those 4 teams, a couple from huge markets in LA. You've got the Seattle market now with Washington in the mix. So those things are also helpful to them in offsetting this, but it's not going to pay the entire bill. Some of that's going to hopefully come, I would imagine they are hoping, from increased revenue in men's basketball. Put a better product on the floor, you get more donors, you get more tickets sold, you get more parking and more concessions and more everything from those games. That's not going to fill the gap, though. So what else could possibly be in the mix? You have to wonder at a certain point, like Chip said, are cuts going to be on the table? If not entire program cuts, budget cuts within those programs, travel cuts within those programs. Those take up a lot of an athletic budget. Are they going to start trimming where teams go? Obviously, Big Ten competition gets expensive now, too. You're not just traveling within the Midwest. You're going to East Coast, West Coast. You're going everywhere. So there's only so much you can do. But non-conference, you do have control over that. Maybe they rein in the non-conference travel, spending, things like that to cut down on the budget spending. I don't know. I don't think they know exactly where all the money's going to come from. They're hoping that it gets balanced out. They need to have it balanced out. But those are still questions to come. That said, having a better men's basketball program would bring in more revenue. The question is how much more? How does that all add up? Let's finish with the cooler. Like I said, some Twins thoughts. We'll do more of this on Wednesday with Bobby Nightingale Jr. I want to pick his brain on the roster. I want to pick his brain on ownership stuff, sales stuff, some interesting reading earlier this week. So I'll get to that with Bobby. Struck me, though, reading the report on their roster. The roster seems more or less set. One spot maybe in the bullpen still to be decided, but here is 25 of the 26 players on the roster after we learned that Mickey Gasper had made it as more like an infielder / utility player, and Deshaun Kiersey has also made it as the 5th outfielder. Catchers, Jeffers and Christian Vasquez, not a surprise there. Infielders, Carlos Correa, Ty France, Willie Castro, Jose Miranda, Edouard Julien, and Mickey Gasper. Outfield, Byron Buxton, Matt Wallner, Trevor Larnach, Harrison Bader, and Kiersey, like we talked about. Starting pitching, no surprise, no setbacks there. Pablo Lopez, Joe Ryan, Bailey Ober, Chris Paddock, Simeon Woods Richardson. Bullpen, Joan Duran, Griffin Jacks, Cole Sands, Danny Coulombe, Jorge Alcala, Louis Varland, Justin Topa, and then the one open spot on the roster. And then there's injured Royce Lewis, Brooks Lee, Brock Stewart, and Michael Tonkin. 2 infielders, 2 relievers. The depth on the infield is what stands out to me right now. Carlos Correa, obviously, if he's healthy, you know exactly what you're getting. I think Willie Castro has proven to be an adept player over the years, but more as a utility guy. The rest of those guys, Ty France, you're kind of hoping. He's on a $1 million non-guaranteed deal. That's going to be a bargain if he plays as well as you hope he's going to play. Even if he hits, though, he is not a very good defensive first baseman, at least according to the advanced metrics. Julian and Miranda, not good defensive players at all. Mickey Gasper, we'll see how much he plays. I'm worried about the infield defense. Let's just put it that way. I'm worried about the infield defense at the start with no Royce Lewis, no Brooks Lee. Not even sure if Brooks Lee was going to make the roster anyway before some of these injuries, but you don't know exactly what you're getting there. But I'm worried about the infield defense. I think the outfield defense should be pretty good, especially with Bader and Kiersey as your fourth and fifth guys, and Buxton obviously in the middle of it all. But defense could be an issue. Pay attention to this. Pay attention to the infield defense, how it impacts games, how it impacts pitching early in the season. So I'm going to talk to Bobby about that more tomorrow, in addition to plenty of other things. Until then, have a great rest of your Tuesday. Back at it again tomorrow.